Union Budget 2025, and this comes by way of a demand for simplification of the tax regime, the individual tax regime under which most Indians, especially those belonging to the middle class, pay their taxes. First up, let's look at what the slabs are between the old and the new tax regime and how these two tax regimes, which were introduced as an option about 5 years ago, have actually panned out for the country. Well, under the old tax regime, there is a nil taxation up to 2.5 lakh rupees. That happens to be the case even for the new tax regime. And then tax slabs change pretty much every 2.5 lakh rupees or so. So, for example, in the 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh tax bracket, under the old tax regime, there's a 20% tax which has been reduced to 10% under the new tax regime. From the 7.5 lakh to 10 lakh window, the old tax regime continues to tax at 20%, while the new tax regime at just 15%. Now, 10 lakh to 12.5 lakh income bracket attracted a 30% tax slab under the old tax regime, but 20% under the new tax regime, and 12.5 to 15 lakh attracted a 30% tax rate under the old tax regime and 25% under the new tax regime. However, in income cases above 15 lakh rupees, there's a 30% tax rate applicable under both old and the new tax regime. Now, what we were showing you on the screen up until now were the deductions allowed under the old tax regime. And there is a call from various quarters that perhaps these tax regimes and the deductions under the old tax regime could perhaps be done away with. So what are these deductions? You had a 1.5 lakh deduction under Section 80C, health insurance premium under Section 80D up to 25,000 rupees. That goes up to 50,000 in the case of senior citizens. Home loan interest under Section 24B at 2 lakh rupees cap, and HRA under Section 1013A up to 50% of the basic salary, while standard deduction being about 50%. Now, what does data tell us about it being time to bid goodbye to the old tax regime? Well, data tells us that 7.28 crore Indians have filed taxes in assessment year 2024-25. This is a 7.5% increase over the previous year's 6.77 crore tax filers. Now, interestingly, there are about 72% Indians who have opted for the new tax regime and just about 28% or 2 crore Indians who've opted for the old tax regime. So the question that we are asking this morning is that should the government simplify taxation with just one tax regime? We have Mr. S. Vasudevan, Executive Partner at Lakshmikumaran Sridharan, joining us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Vasudevan. Help us understand, if more and more Indians are opting for the new tax regime, it tells us that there isn't perhaps as much case for offering these various deductions that we spoke about. Is it time for Finance Minister to bid adieu to the old tax regime?
Yeah, good morning, Kartik, and good morning to all your viewers. I do believe that the way forward is going to be the new tax regime, wherein it's all about moderating the tax rates and removing all the exemptions and deductions. So I do agree with you that there may be temptation to offer further concessions, further deductions to achieve certain very specific objectives. But keeping the overall plan in mind, I think that the government may not succumb to that temptation, and they may continue giving more impetus to the new regime, and maybe they may offer some kind of rate reduction in the new regime. They may increase these exemption limits, etc. But I will be very surprised if they go back to the old ways of offering very specific exemptions and deductions.
Okay, but what is the rationale for the government, even 5 years after announcing two tax regimes, to stick to two tax regimes and giving that choice to individuals to file their taxes in either of the two? Should there not be one simplified, unified tax regime, and that becomes a mandate across the board for everybody who's filing taxes?
Absolutely. I think that's the end game. It will be only one regime at some point of time. Maybe this budget, maybe next budget, that I'm not able to predict. But you're right that 72% is a good enough number for the government to now consider doing away completely with the old regime and only having the new regime. But probably they have their own numbers. They know when to make that switch over. Maybe this is the year.
Okay, maybe this is the year, maybe not. Well, it's all in the realm of speculation right now, Mr. Vasudevan. But I also want to understand from you that if there are likely to be any tax tweaks and if there is going to be any change in the slab rate under the new tax regime, then what makes a good case for the government to make those changes? Which are the slabs under which you believe that there is a case to increase or reduce the effective tax rate? Should it be for for the high income, those drawing salary above 50 lakh rupees, and this is a demand that has come from many quarters, that the 30% tax rate should be valid only for those who are making in excess of 50 lakh rupees income, and there should be a reduced tax slab for those who are making under 50 lakh rupees? Or should there be perhaps a nil taxation going up all the way to about 10 lakh rupees from the current just about 2.5 lakh rupees or so?
Yeah, I think one case for reducing the tax rates could be that there has been a lot of hue and cry about the consumption levels going down, the growth slowing down, etc. So maybe that may be one reason why the government may consider putting more money in the pockets of the taxpayers so that the consumption level can increase or it can at least be maintained. Now, when it comes to the question of which slab they should be tinkering with, again, it's a matter of number crunching, which I'm sure the government will be doing. Yes, no doubt, when it comes to the number of taxpayers, it will be more at the lower slabs. When you talk about the higher slabs, the number of taxpayers may be low, so more from a political standpoint, they may be looking at offering some kind of a benefit even to the smaller taxpayers. So maybe sort of a graded increase in these slab rates can happen. But again, these are all things which also will depend on so many other things which the government is going to do, how much money they need for other spending. Also, we are talking about increasing the capital expenditure. So, and also about spending on infrastructure. So, how much elbow room the government is going to have. Maybe we are away from an election year. Maybe that can be one of the factors that the government may consider, that probably next 2-3 years they have to focus on fiscal consolidation and keep some of these populist measures out of the window. So I think there may be some bit of good news which they would like to give to the taxpayers, but it may not be very significant, is what I think.
Okay, some relief, maybe not that significant, but there's a dichotomy here. At one level, we want more income in the hands of the middle class to drive the consumption story, and that in any case is going to lead to better fiscal numbers for the government of India, if not great fiscal consolidation. At least consumption, by way of being 60% of a contributor to the GDP, will see some sort of a fillip. But on the other side, as middle class Indians, we also grapple with the fact that most of the 7 crore plus Indians who are paying taxes are actually filing nil returns as part of their taxes. So any tinkering on the slab rate to increase the threshold of nil taxation will actually result in more number of nil taxpayers and is going to contradict the consumption hypothesis. So how do you view this balancing act which the government is expected to do?
Yeah. So I think according to me, the way this government has been approaching it all along has been to, say, for example, focus on employment generation, to increase manufacturing in India, to encourage more and more investment coming into India. And they believe that by increasing the employment and sort of increasing the average income levels, automatically it is going to result in more taxes. I think that that's the philosophy, rather than simply reducing the tax rates and putting more money into the existing taxpayers' hands. So maybe there is some success which they have achieved based on it. Maybe they may come up with more such measures which will boost the consumption in an indirect way, rather than directly putting some cash into the hands of the taxpayers.